So hello and welcome, and we're gonna run the exercise 1 today for the course. I have a task opened here. I'll open it in the second window so you won't see it, but I'll be closely following the guidelines that are described there. So today we'll run our first Android application. So we start with creating a new project. With an empty activity, we can choose type of project, and we're going to use a phone and tablet. We could use automotive or Wear OS or Android Things or Android TV. That would be fine, but for most of the course we'll work on a phone and tablet, and this is what we'll choose. And we'll use an empty activity because we don't need all those fancy stuff. We'll probably use some of those later. Okay, now we're gonna use some a name for our applications, which would be task 1. We're gonna use a minimum API of 16, which is okay, and use app compat, so legacy support libraries. They are no longer supported in the new Androids, and we should use Android X in the future, but for now we're gonna stick with those and we'll be fine. Okay, so let's finish and let the project start. Great. I'm gonna close the other one because we don't need it. Okay, so next step which we're gonna do is first, okay, we're gonna make sure that we can run it. Okay, it's still building, so we'll go through the tree first. So we're gonna talk a little about what's where. So the main part of an Android application is an activity. So this is the main building block. Activity can be thought of as a single thing that is done on the screen. So for example, if you have a messaging app, then one activity would be showing a list of messages, and the other activity would be, for example, seeing a single conversation. Or maybe a third activity would be some archive or something like that. So this is an activity. It has to be either activity or app compat activity. We'll talk about it later, why we choose any of them. And then we have this onCreate, and the activities will be the classes in which we'll write most of the code. Then there is Android test, one that is run on the device, and a regular Java unit test. We'll be using Java in this exercise. Kotlin is also fine. Many people use Kotlin in Android applications. And then we have manifest, Android manifest. This is a very important XML file. It describes the application, and well, it's basically the core, the thing that Android uses to know that our application has some activities, so what we can do in that. So there's not much here that is important for us now. So one thing is this package. So Android can know that classes inside this application will use this package, and it actually appends the names of activities to this package name. Then we have theme. We'll talk about themes a bit later. Icons and lots of other stuff which we don't care about right now. And finally, well, not finally, we have also resources. So there are some paths, some images. We can view those images as code or as well in the design mode, or in both. Split is also fine. There are some XML files which are basically constants, but there are constants that can be environment related. So for example, strings can be translated, and we can have several files for strings in various languages. And there are also styles, which we'll get back to later. Bitmaps, which are basically icons that will be used. So launcher icons, we have round icon. As you can see, there are several files with the same name. for different screen densities. So for example, this one is MDPI, and as you can see, it's quite blurred. So it's for devices that don't have a high resolution. And this one XXX HDPI, it's sharp. So this one is for very high density screens. Right, and finally, final resource which we'll talk about now is layout. This layout describes the elements that are visible in the activity, and it's an XML file. We'll work on both design and code today. It's up to you which one you prefer, because they are basically functionally equivalent, and you can use both. We'll get back to it in a minute. Finally, there are Gradle scripts. So our top level Gradle and Android application Gradle. As you can see, it's a bit. It has some instructions that say, okay, I'm using it in Android. I'm using SDK 29, build tools for 29. Minimum version is 16. This is my application ID. Those kinds of stuff. As you can see, our app compat is underlined, and if we go to it, we can see that the version 28 which we use is intended for Android Pie and below, and for future we should migrate to Android X. That's what we already talked about. And there's one more thing. So there are also some other files like properties or things like that, and Progrart rules. We want to talk about Progrart. Progrart is used for minification and optimization of Android applications. One important thing is that this view is Android dedicated view, and it's not exactly how the directories look like. We can see the directory structure here. So this one is the main IDE. Well, I use Android Studio. This IDE is for IDE. Then there are apps. There is the app directory, and there are Gradle directory for scripts and for wrapper. Well, we could also have a build and many other directories. That's not that important. Sources are here. And here's Android manifest, and here are the resources, and the Java files are also here. We'll go to the Android view because it's well, dedicated to Android, but it really doesn't matter which one you prefer. It's just a matter of ID. Fine. Then let's go through the exercise and see the future items. So first we have to make sure that our build Gradle for the module contains application ID, minimum SDK version, and target SDK version, and it does, as we can see. And then we have something that is obsolete, and I'm gonna do that so that you see why we cannot use it. So the instruction says that we should have uses SDK here, with an Android minimum version of whatever we said, and Android target version of well, you know, okay, yeah, 60, not 160. Okay, so now what we would like to do is we would like to re-import the project, and as you can see, after we run it, we have a message that target SDK version should not be declared in the Android manifest file, and it can be moved to default config. So that's why Gradle project sync fails. So we're gonna remove that and re-import again, and it will go fine now. Okay, so now before we continue with the exercise, I'm gonna show you that it actually can work, can run. So resync is done, and we're gonna use the Nexus 5X, but it doesn't really matter which one you prefer. So you can use virtually any device, and that will be fine for this exercise. So let's wait a second until it starts. Yeah, so the device has to start, and then we'll get our activity will be started by the launcher, by the debugger. Yep, there we go. So we have our task 1 and hello world here, which is pretty much what is the default version, the default application. Great, so now what we have to do is we have to go to, to actually changing stuff. So we start with the layout, just as the exercise describes. So as you can see, right now we have a constraint layout. I'm gonna remove it because we'll talk about constraint layouts a little later. And I'm gonna put a linear layout in this case. So it has some, needs to have some default attributes, like this thing, Android XML namespace, and XML namespace tools, which is also HTTP tools, and then we're gonna run Android orientation, which would be vertical. And then there are also some other things like left height, which we're gonna just match parent, which basically means as much place as you have, as you can use, and layout width, which is also match parent. So in our case, whole window. Now, next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna add a text view, and I'm also gonna add it here. And it's gonna have full width of the view of the layout, so match parent, but its height is gonna be minimal, which means wrap content. So enough high enough to wrap the content so that it won't overlap with other items, but no higher. And then we also have to put a string here, and we're gonna use a string from this file. There is a name here, but we're gonna put a new one, which will be hello. And this will be hello. And since we're already here, we're gonna put maybe 3 more. So let's have a by string go away. Not this one. Go away. That would say go away. One more. Come back. Yeah, so we have some strings here. And we're gonna put Android text here. And this string would be hello. Right, so as you can see in the view, which is opened in the other tab, it would be displayed like that. We also have to align it to the center, which means in our case Android text alignment center. And we get an error here, and the error means error is that to support version 16, which we specified as supported, we must also specify either gravity or layout gravity. And we're going to use layout gravity. Now, if we put, say, another text view, which would also have a match parent and wrap content, and this other text would be under text, which would be add string say by, it would be displayed vertically below. So this is what a linear layout is. Now, as you can see, it's vertical layout. It can also be horizontal. If it is horizontal, then they are put one next to the other. And since our width is 100% of the parent, it's right now not visible, but we can have a wrap content here, and then the by will also be visible here. Okay, let's get back to the vertical one. And let's test it on the actual simulator. So yep, it's deployed and started. Yeah, as you can see, we have hello and we have bye, which is exactly what we expected, and we saw it already here. Great, so it works. Next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna add buttons. And we're gonna add two buttons, and one of it we're gonna use the same method we did right now. So we're gonna add it using code version, and it's gonna be just match parent and wrap content. So a button that is the same as previously defined, and text, not text alignment, I'm gonna have text, just text, and this would be a go away button. Or we can make it wrap content here too, and then make it put it to the center. Great. So we can add a button like that, or we could use the design pane here and just drag and drop it. So this one would be a different text, and this would be, say, come back. And it's pretty much the same, so we can just adjust these values here. So we have to find the layer gravity. If we go here, we can find it somewhere, or we can go here and look in the list, and there is layout gravity here, and we're gonna match mark center. Okay, so we have our go away and come back buttons, and that's great. Let's make sure that IDs are also there. So this one is gonna be button 2, and the other one is gonna be button 1. And it doesn't have the idea yet, so ID yet. So I'm gonna add the ID, and it's gonna be button 1. Okay, great. Now, oh yeah, we also have to modify the font size for the welcome message, and this is so for this hello. And if you don't know what's the font size, you can just add an attribute here, try with size, and as you can see, we have something like text size, which is in our case 40 SP. That's a size measure here, and we're gonna make it 36 because that's what the exercise wants us to do. Right, so let's test it. Apply changes and restart. Oh yeah, we did change the resource, and we need to restore the whole application. Right, doesn't matter much, still we have it. Okay, we can click the buttons and they're clickable. Great, but nothing much happens, right? So right now what we're gonna do is we're gonna create a new activity, which is I think one of the most important things, the interaction between activities. So we're gonna create an empty activity that we'll call activity2. Layout name will be activity2, fair enough. Package name and source language will still be Java. That's not complicated. No. Okay. Now we have our activity2. We have a layout for it, it's empty. So now we're gonna put an item in the middle. That's what the exercise says. Put a text item in the middle. Now, in the previous activity, we used linear layout to put things next to one another. This is not the best way to use to put something in the middle. So the way to put it in the middle is to use the same layout as we saw in the beginning, which is a constraint layout, which is the one that the designer will use automatically. Okay, so we're gonna put it here, and as you can see, we have this constraint layout here, and I'm just gonna drag and drop it to each of the edges of the device. Now we could move it right or left or whichever way. If we want it in the middle, we just leave it like that. So these strings are adjustable. We could do it any way we like. And as you can see, this bias is also adjustable as a declared attribute. Okay, we don't want to have bias here, but we want to change the text, and we want to set the text to push and hold. Okay, so that's what the exercise says. Right, so we've created this one, and now we have to navigate to this activity. And to navigate to this activity, we're gonna start here at our main activity. And we're gonna navigate to it in two ways. So first way is we'll create a final intent one. Yeah, we have to import that, which is a new intent that will start from this one and move to activity 2. Then we take our button 1, which is a button. We can take it by ID, so we can use find view by ID, resources, ID, and button 1. So this R is basically the resource file. Just let's call it compiled. Now B1, we want to set an onClick listener because we want to listen to clicks, and this will be a new onClick listener. onClick listener, and we're gonna add this function methods that we need, which is only onClick. And onClick, we want to start activity with intent 1. So we're gonna use intent 1 to start the activity. Right. And now the second thing is we'll use a different way, and this will be public void open activity 2, which would also take a view as an argument, and it will be pretty similar to that. So we'll have an intent, and then we're gonna start it. We'll start the activity. And the difference is that we're gonna use our code and take button 2 and add an Android onClick attribute. So onClick run open activity 2 function method. Right. Oh yeah, and now we have to implement going back now. So going back, we have our item push and hold, which is text view. We're gonna open activity 2 and add a listener here. So this one will be slightly different because it's gonna use, it won't be a button, it's a text view. And we're just gonna use view because view is base class for all those specific views. Find view by ID, our ID, and our view is text view. Good. Now this view we want to set onLongClick listener, and this is basically the same, and it's gonna finish the activity and return false. In our case, it won't matter much, but we just have to return whether that long click was consumed or not. In our case, we say it isn't, but we could also say it is. It won't matter much. Okay, so let's test it. Okay, we have our activity. We can use this one to go to the next one. We can use back button to come back. We can use this other button that had attribute to move to our second activity. And we can push and hold, and we'll move. We can also click here, but it won't change anything. We have to hold. Right. So we have our onClick listeners, and longClick, long tap, which is great. So now we have to add our final activity, the third one, and we're gonna add activity, an empty one, and we're gonna call it activity 3. Now this one will not be an app-compat activity, it will just be an activity. This is generally not the best idea to mix app-compat activities with not app-compat activities. We're just doing it here to show you the differences. You might want to avoid that in your projects, and especially in the future. Right, so our third activity that is not app-compat. So we're gonna add a button here to this third activity, and this button will say, we're gonna put it somewhere here. Not that important. We're gonna call it back. And let's say this is a button. This actually is a button. So, and this button will have a handler for going back, but we have to write this handler first, so that Android will see it. So public void go back, and this will also take a view as an argument. This view won't matter, but so we just simulate going back. It will be the same as the button on the bottom of the screen. But the second thing we'll add is we'll also add override protected void onStop. That's alright. Yeah, so we'll start with that. And then the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna show a toast. And this toast is current context. Activity restart, and we're gonna show it for a short length. Yeah, short period of time, as you can see. Okay, so this will happen, but after it's done. So our on text. Our button is here. This view is not constrained yet, so we'll have to do it in a second. But first we're gonna add an onClick activity here, which will run our function. Great. So we're gonna have these constraints here. So just put it here. Well, this one we can remove. We can just adjust it to 2 of those. Something like that. That's also a constraint layout, and it's fine. Okay. Now we have to also to go to this third activity, and we'll run from the first activity. Button 1 will go to activity 3 instead of activity 2. So now we have 3 activities which we can use. Let's see if that works for us. We go to activity 2, now we go to activity 3, we can go back, and then as you can see, toast is shown. I'm going to run it once more. Activity 2, nothing happens. Activity 3, toast. Yeah. So finally, the last element, style. So we're going to add 2 styles here. And here is what will be why app-compat is important. If you have if you have activities that are app compat activities, they require teams that are app compat. So those will require app compat teams. This one won't. We're gonna check it. So I'm gonna have my style here, which would be derived from well, maybe not app compat now, but let's say we're gonna have Android team hello, and another style which I'm gonna call your style, because why not? I'm gonna call it app team app compat day night. And now I'm gonna show you what will happen if we mess up the styles. So we go to Android manifest, just to remind us. So my style is not app compat and your style is app compat. So activity 3 is not app compat. Yeah, a bit complicated, isn't it? So we're gonna just add teams here to activity 3 and activity 2. And first we're gonna start with two teams that are both my style, and my style is not app compat. Right, it's team holo. And we're gonna see what happens, because that's what emulators are for. Yeah, changes were not applied. We have to restart. Okay, so first we go to activity 2, activity 3, and it works fine. Then we go to activity 2, and it's stopped. And if we go to our run console, we can see that unable to start activity, activity 2, you need to use a team, app compat team, or descendant with this activity. That's because it is an app compat activity. Okay, so let's change both to app compat and see what happens. So one works and the other works. So both work with app compat, but my style can only be used with non-app compat ones. And it works fine here, but doesn't work here. So once that's one of the reasons why messing up app compat with non-app compat is a little hard to track, and well, it's probably a bit easier to just keep all your activities in one type of base class. And that's it for today's exercise. Let me just do a quick recap. We've created 3 activities, both activities that are app compat activities, so compatible with older Android versions, and activities that are not. We implemented 2 ways of onClick listening, of listening to clicks on buttons. We added several resources here, 2 styles, some strings. We modified layouts. We modified a constraint layout in 2 ways. We saw some of the changes in this design way, and we also did some coding in the XML layout, which is, as you saw, not much harder than clicking stuff in the design, especially with code completion that is in Android Studio. We did onClick list, a long click listener for long taps. We changed some themes in Android manifest. These 2. We could also change the main theme for the application. That will also be okay. And then we also tried to run a toast successfully. Simulated going back and forth. Finished the activity. And well, generally, yeah, we also had listeners on non-button items. And that's it for today. Thank you for listening, and good luck. Bye bye.